everyone, and welcome to Creative Mornings, our October, is it looked up? Yes, our October edition. And this is our second to last event of the year. Oh, thank you for that sad sigh. Our last one will be in November, so tell your friends about our November event when we get that information out to you. So I have a quick show of hands. For whom is this their first Creative Mornings? Yay, some new faces, welcome! So I am going to start us off, Lucy is going to start us off with a beautiful karakia to open the space today. Right, Lucy. So I still got some toast.
Nom nom.
He rangi e whakatue te aiona tue te aron, aiona rangi kia puta tēnei taura, kia puta ai tēnei taura. Te tātou ki te taha wātea, koronua koroi ora, uie tai.
Kia ora. So for those folks who have never been to Creative Mornings before, every month we have a global theme, and this global theme, as the name states, is all around the world. So ideally, everyone around the world, and approximately the last Friday of the month, is running an event about this theme. So the wonderful Claire, who is my co-host, is going to read a quick synopsis about the theme of vision.
Kia ora koutou. How do you see the world? How do you want to change it? Vision refers both to the sense of sight and our ability to imagine the future. Are you focused on the little details? Can you see the big picture? As we age, our eyesight begins to deteriorate. Seeing objects up close gets more difficult. And as we gain experience, what we want to accomplish evolves. Will your life grow darker or brighter? Each creative act involves seeing something in your mind's eye, then attempting to make it a reality. A painter, an architect, and every other type of artist or craftsman has a vision for their work. What message, emotion, or impact do you want to convey in yours? You are your own visionary. What do you want to see? Thank you.
Beautiful. Cool. And for everyone, but also especially for those folks that are new today, if you need a little bit of extra Creative Mornings in your life every month, there are field trips, which are online, virtual sort of talks and workshops with folks from all around the world. So check that out on the Creative Mornings website. And of course, as usual, a special thanks to our wonderful sponsors. So Six Barrel Soda, who provides us with a beautiful speaker gift. Libertine Blends, for those that do not caffeinate with coffee. Coffee Supreme, for wonderful coffee this morning. And All Good Oat Milk. And then we have Colourcraft for the labels. Bad Baker for the breakfast cookies, although there was some extra breakfast cookies in there today that were not from us, they were just sitting there, so I'm sorry. 40 Thieves for the peanut butter. We've run out of chocolate, I'm going to tell them because we really want some of that back. And M's Bread for the delicious sourdough, which is made in Miramar. 257 for this amazing space. For those of you who came out to Q Space last month, thank you so much for joining us. We are very excited though to be back on our home turf of 257. We've got our wonderful video and photography folks today. Can you all just raise your hands? 1, 2, 3. Oh, I mean you can be part of it too.
I thought everyone was raising.
Sorry. I love that. Arms up. No, that's fine. Absolutely fine. Big thank you to everyone that records our sessions. And shout out to our amazing volunteers who make the coffee and make the toast and make everything awesome. We love you lots. If you are social media inclined, we are on the following things: Instagram, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Sometimes I talk to people on Instagram. That's about the extent of my social media. So yeah, like us, follow us, all those things. And that is all from me. So without further ado, I will pass it on to Caspian, who is the creative director of Kiss Labs, a design agency in Wellington. Big round of applause.
Cool. So I had this all ready, and then this morning I woke up, but I hadn't actually appreciated that you can't have vision with without two eyes. And I just thought, maybe I should put that in, and I didn't have any more thought than that, but we'll start there, because I think it's pretty epic. So, there are a few familiar faces in this room that I know, but the majority of people they don't know me. So let's change it. I'm Caspian. I'm a brand strategist, a designer, creative director, and idea explorer, I suppose, for a successful design studio called Kiss Labs here in Wellington. And we serve product-based businesses around the world. But just by looking at this slide, you've already made a couple of assumptions. You see a person who looks like me, and some happy smiley people in the forest there. And you're going to make the assumption that's my family. You'd be right. So yeah, we've got my name. And if you're working in the creative industries at all, you'll be making some assumptions about this ironic use of the golden ratio there as well. So we've already started on this journey of vision. The most important thing about what we've learned just now is the act of seeing is interpretive. We are literally interpreting what we're seeing in front of us. And a lot of what we think we see isn't actually there. This is not actually the golden ratio. And despite what many people will think, there isn't a single L on this page. But for most of my life, people have been telling me that my name is Ievers and not Ievers. So if we learn anything else, so that's how we pronounce my name. So what are we doing here? Somebody asked me if I wanted to give this talk, and I haven't given a talk for a very long time. Okay, let's do this. I have absolutely no idea about it. So I asked some internet friends what I should talk about. And they said, hey, why don't you talk about what it is to have a creative vision? You're a creative director after all. How are you visionary when everything else feels the same? And they had potential, but I felt it wasn't really me, because I'm not the kind of guy who feels comfortable telling you what to think. That you need to run faster, stand up more, eat less sugar, recycle better, learn to code, name your layers, actually, yeah, call your mum. But I don't want to add to the noise. And also less of a creative morning person, more of a sort of creative brunch. So I want to make it too heavy. But before we really get into it, I have a small request. Everyone's got a notepad, and I would like everyone to draw me a ball. So if you haven't got a notepad and a pencil, there are a few more lying around, so grab one. It doesn't have to be any good. Like, it really doesn't. Whatever you want to do. 30 seconds should be enough. And then we'll get stuck in. Okay? Well, we just keep going. You can keep refining them as we go. Oh, I guess it's slightly boring. Right, let's get stuck into vision. So vision is something 97% of us rely on daily. We use it to navigate the world and make sense of what's around us. But what exactly is a vision? What is actually happening? So in order to understand it, we must explore the act of perception. And to do that, we've got to go right to the very beginning. He was quite excited when I told her I was going to talk about cats.
I was going to bring them in, but I don't think they would perform, to be honest.
Is anyone here an expert on quantum theory? Because I'm going to have to fake it. At its core, perception is the act of observation. With our eyes, we detect light and interpret the resultant information from the environment. And this act of detection has profound implications. So anyone who did any sort of physics at school is familiar with this. It's a double slit experiment, and it proves what is known as the observer effect. So light's coming in, lasers are shining light from the left-hand side, and that first barrier has two little slits in it, and you put a light detecting meter there, and you detect individual particles going through those slits. But when the light hits the the right-hand barrier, it displays what would be the same as if the light wasn't in particles but was actually in waves. But a lot more impressive. Scientists can explain this a lot better than me. But the point is at one point light is traveling in waves, but when you detect it, it seems to behave as particles. So what this means is the act of observation influences the reality that we experience, or basically observing stuff will change it. And it sounds impossible, but things like gravity and other crazy things, scientists have proved that it's true. So we're going to have to take it as read. But this duality phenomenon is not just limited to tiny particles like light. It affects bigger things too, like cats. So we all heard of Schrodinger's cat. This is an illustration from the excellent game So Good Kiss. Yes. Put it on your Christmas list. So it's happy. So Schrödinger proposed a thought experiment where a cat is in a box. And in the box with this cat is a poison and a radioactive object. Now the radioactive element will decay and trigger the poison, or it won't decay. And so he proposed that at any one moment in time the cat is both alive and dead. And it's only when you observe it that you know one or the other. Or until you observe that it is one or the other. So again, the act of observation is influencing the reality that we experience. So these experiments examine that phenomenon at both the quantum scale and larger observable systems like cats. So that's the science, that's the basic theory stuff, but what's actually happening where we see things? Again, is anyone an ophthalmologist? Right. Okay, so humans have 3 groups of sensors in our eyes that favour different wavelengths. They're shaped like cones, so they're called cones. One group of cones favours short waves, which is those that favour the red. Medium wavelengths, like greens, and the longer ones, blues. That's got it right. Yeah, that's right. I think. I guess the other way around. Anyway, I'm not a smallest. And when light enters our eyes and hits these cones, it triggers a chemical reaction that sends electrical signals to the brain, and there these signals are interpreted as different colours. That's all the biology we need. And then we're going to slip into history. And the most important thing to remember, if you get anything else, is not all colours appeared at the same time. Black, white, red and yellow are the most universally named colours and have been around for the longest. Among all cultures and all languages. Other colours became described in due course when new pigments became available. This is a fun little game. I've got 2 boys, you saw them at the beginning, and they're both round about sort of 7 years old. Both asked me exactly the same question. They said, Dad, do we see the same, do we see the same red? Or was my red different to your red? They've also, and I think it's quite amazing because I remember saying the same thing. So this is a little game, and anyone like to volunteer? It's quite fun. Is this blue or is this green?
Blue.
Okay.
Green.
Blue.
Oh, there you go.
Tiffany
We're
blue.
going to show of hands. Is this blue?
Crazy.
Okay, that is more than half. Okay. We're also the limitation of as I read. But so blue, anybody? Green? Okay, it's just think of
Green.
Right on the edge.
Hey, it's blue? Hang on, please. Green?
Someone that casts moons.
I think it's well, no, it's green. So okay, this one.
Blue.
The same colour. We can't have the same colour. Okay, so this audience is bluer than 85% of the population. Turquoise in your eyes is Greek. So anyway, let's go back to what we were looking at. So what we've learned just then is 2 things. This monitor and this monitor are different, but also how we divide the spectrum that we see isn't fixed. In addition to what's happening in our eyes, is the influence from the languages that we speak. Different languages have different basic colour terms. In the past, blue was rarely distinguished from green, and so the colour blue, the name blue, wasn't needed. About 4.5 1,000 years ago, there wasn't blue. Other than the sky, blue doesn't appear much in nature, so there was no real need to use a word for that colour. You could just call it sky. And the ancient Egyptians changed things up when they started producing a blue dye from mining a semi-precious stone and started to fill the world with colour. They dyed statues, they dyed their clothes, they painted their faces, and this meant that they needed a way of talking about variations within this colour. And they called it Urtaru. And I don't know anyone else who speaks Egyptian, so I'm pretty sure I nailed that one. And then in the 1500s, that was a pretty crazy time. It was the golden age of exploration. Copernicus proposed the Earth revolved around the sun. The Renaissance was in full swing, and the colour orange was named. Up till then, it was called yellow-red, which is quite descriptive. But a newly imported yellow-red fruit from Southeast Asia with the name Naranja changed things. Up until the 1800s, pink was just light red, which I guess it is. It doesn't really do it justice. Its name actually came from the common name for a flower whose particular petals were pinked, which means scalloped like pinking shears. Anyway, that's where we leave history behind, and we get into the really weird stuff about what we see, about vision. There's not much academic research on colour psychology, as you might think. In fact, I read a paper that said there are more articles on men's underwear than there are on colour psychology. That's what I read. That said, there is one particular one from 1979 that stands out, where some scientists discovered this particular shade of pink has a very peculiar property. If you paint this particular colour on a wall, it's been proven to reduce hostile, violent and aggressive behaviour.
Wow.
It's often called drunk tank pink. Staring at the colour after exercise lowers your heart rate and your respiration compared to other colours. Just looking at this colour has a measurable physiological change.
What did you say it was called?
Drunk tank pink or Baker Miller pink.
Bacon.
And you can also charge 25% more by products that are pink. It's a company called the pink tax. But why? My early academic journey was in psychology, and this is a question that I ask a lot. There's loads of blogs from content creators and colour theory and design influencers saying, this is the colour palette for the tech industry, use this. Anyway, and they'll say things like, hey, pink is a mix between red's passion and white's purity. It symbolises love, nurture, passion, evoking feelings of comfort, warmth and hope. And I've read that, and it's absolute crap. And we're not interested in colour theory. What we're on the hunt for is colour fact. Why do some colours affect us? After all, it is just electrical signals entering our brain. There's a great psychologist called Nick Kalenda who's been putting forward some compelling explanations on the idea of what he calls sensory foundations that form the building blocks of perception and behaviour. As we'll discuss, what we see actually does affect us. As well as the tests he conducts himself, he scours the literature and tries to tie these findings together. Some of the information that he presents, I have absolutely no idea what to do with, but I find it amazing. Like glossy colours, we prefer glossy colours when we're thirsty. Possibly because glossy colours remind us of liquid. There was a test where he fed people dry crackers, and then there were colours that they preferred. Crazy thing. What could we do with it? Don't know. We could maybe tell L&P that they shouldn't have the matte cans because people prefer shiny colours, but they stand out. Other stuff he's written about is more interesting. For example, psychologists have found that bright rooms seem warmer. Why? Why might this be? Well, according to his concept, natural heat sources project light via sun, lava. And we notice that heat sources have typical colours: fire, sun, lava, red, orange, and yellows. And so we attribute these colours as warm. And so bright rooms seem warmer. And it's not just that we associate these colours with the idea of warmth. Warm colours actually activate physical properties. Tests have proved that coffee does seem warmer in red cups. So, what do you do with this information? Maybe you buy a orange coffee cup. You might. But who would do that? Or, like me, you might use that information for the creative direction of a not-for-profit energy company that gives back to the community. Because I was thinking that maybe someone browsing the web, experiencing their brand for the first time, walking past the pay stubs, could feel warmer. Warm is a positive emotion. Maybe that would increase conversion rates. So that's vision regards to how things are under normal circumstances, but the most interesting things happen when you start to explore where vision deviates from what is considered normal. Oliver Sacks wrote an excellent book called The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. In this book, he talked about a patient of his called Mr. P, who confused his wife for a hat. But it's not actually thought his wife was a hat. He was just unable to recognize her. He thought his wife's hat was actually his wife, but that doesn't actually make a great book title. So, honestly, it's a really good book. This patient suffered from what psychologists call visual agnosia. It's a neurological disorder that prevented him from recognizing faces and objects. It's not that he still managed to walk around the world, walk around them, and actually practice himself. But he compensated. He made up his inability to recognize objects by compensating with other cues, like the voice of the person he was talking to, or specifically cues about what they were wearing, or their accent. He didn't realize anything was wrong. What normally happens is my wife has a cute nose, green eyes, and a mole on her cheek, whereas he would see it as this thing in front of me has a cute nose, green eyes, and a mole on her cheek. Therefore, it must be my wife. Or my wife wears that hat there, or that hat over there must be my wife. So what makes that even more interesting is that the ability to see faces is baked in to our brains. We are primed to quickly identify faces, and this is an evolutionary thing for enhanced social interaction and detecting potential threats. Even newborn babies prefer to look at faces with open eyes than with closed eyes. This is even before face tracking. This is even before they can actually focus on anything. They can discriminate the difference in eye visibility right from birth. And by 2 months, babies show a strong preference for looking at the eye regions of faces over other areas like the mouth. Which is really interesting considering all babies want to do is eat, so you'd have thought mouths are really important. Anyway, we love faces and we're drawn to eyes from the moment we're born. It's got a name, pareidolia, I think it's called. But anyway, what do you do with this information? More specifically, what does someone like me do with that information? Well, I got the chance to work on the creative direction for a sustainable packaging company, where there was very little difference between any of the products. What we're talking about is sort of takeaway packaging from Uber and that sort of thing. Anyway, I decided to create faces that would help trigger an emotional reaction where people experience this brand for the first time. In effect, hacking their brains. It is very cool. Right, so maybe I fulfilled my obligation talking about vision. And now I want to talk about something that really blows my mind. How the heck can we form mental pictures in the absence of anything in front of us? So how do we see things in our mind? This ability to form mental imagery plays a huge part in making us who we are. It influences our memory, our problem solving, creativity, and imagination. So imagine a ball on a table. Now imagine someone walks up to that ball and pushes it. What happens?
Balls.
Now what colour was the ball?
What? Red.
Red.
And who was the person to push the ball? What was they wearing? What was the table? What was it made of? What did it look like? What room was it in? Now the important question isn't any of that. The important question is, did you know that before I asked those questions? Broadly speaking, we can divide the room up into two groups of people, visualizers and conceptualizers. You ask a visualizer about this, and they immediately have the answer. They see the scene in their mind's eye. They might say, hey, this ball is about the size of a tennis ball. It's an old wooden table with scratches on it. But conceptualizers approach this completely differently. They grasp the idea of the scenario and use knowledge and experience, focusing on abstract ideas rather than visual specifics. And this is where I spend my time. To conceptualists like me, the ball on the table is an idea. I know that if a ball is nudged, it rolls, probably off the table. But the size, the color, and who's doing it isn't important until somebody directly prompts me. Again, why is there a difference between these two groups? About 2 years ago, I discovered a word that completely changed how I understand myself and why I'm a conceptualizer. At the start, you all drew a horse. Now, despite having many years of riding lessons and being very familiar with horses, if someone asked me to imagine a horse in my mind, I struggle. But the more I read about this word, the more it made sense to me. This is a photo of a horse visualized by someone with aphantasia. For people without aphantasia, it's the idea of a horse that matters, not any pictures of it, not any internal pictures of it specifically. Now, I never knew, or really didn't understand, why despite having an extensive art education, practicing drawing techniques and theory, I was so much better at drawing from life than from my imagination. And I didn't understand why I didn't picture the faces of my friends and family in my head. And when I tried, I would fail. And I put that down to being easily distracted and not concentrating enough. Not that there's a dark void in there, and I obviously know what my wife and my kids look like when I come home. But when I stop and try and picture them, I don't actually see them. Just last week, this week, a paper was published on some MRI studies that suggest that scientists are just starting to uncover the structural differences in brains between people with aphantasia and those without. But despite not seeing pictures in my head very clearly, I still have managed to be a successful creative director and still have bonkers ideas. So it's not about lacking any imagination, it's just about experiencing the imagination differently. One of my favorite books of all time is The Little Prince. Hopefully there's a few people in this room who have read it. It is absolutely amazing, but if you haven't, quick overview, it's about a young prince who explores different planets, all about the size of a house. And he learns life's lessons through the encounters that he has on the way. But in this book, the little prince asks the narrator to draw him a sheep. And instead he draws something else. He drew this. Now the little prince can clearly see that this is a picture of a snake that has eaten an elephant. And he's not happy. After all, he'd asked very politely for a picture of a sheep. My 12-year-old wrote that caption. As a child, I thought that this drawing was the most wonderful example of creative thinking. But nowadays I see it differently. To me, it's a beautiful example of how one person will see something completely different to how another person will see it. And how our individual perspective and the role of imagination and how our unique physiological differences shape our perception. And it also nicely seeks into this elephant in the room. I asked everyone to draw a horse. So everyone, if you could have a look at your horses, I have a guess that they probably look a lot like this. Most people, when asked to draw a horse, would produce something like these side-on drawings. And that's the important bit, the side-on side. Why we tend to draw horses like this has nothing to do with our artistic ability or experience with horses, but rather how our brains store the information about the objects that we've seen. These representations contain the most distinguishing information about the thing using the least amount of brain power. It's literally a typical contour around an object, and every object has one. Sometimes they're not as obvious as you would have thought. And it's not about how familiar we are. We all experience as chairs looking down on them, but we all draw a quick chair the same way. So I was saying, when it comes to recalling information about what we've seen, we will rely on what we know and what we already have stored in our brain, not what we're seeing. So, what could we learn this morning? Hopefully that we've seen perception shapes our experiences at the most fundamental levels, as seen in quantum theory, and we've learned that colours affect our physical and mental abilities, and how our vision influences the world around us and how it shapes our reality. Or to put it another way, we've gone some way into understanding how awesome, some of the awesome reasons why you can't trust your eyes. Thanks. anyone has in theory?
It's interesting, Caspian. It made me think of until I was 11 and I was forced to get glasses by a teacher who said she'd tell my mother, I practice if I didn't tell her I need my eyes tested. I could tell who people were by the shade of them. Like from the distance, I couldn't see who they were, but the shape of them and how they walked, the motions, that's what told me he was coming towards me. He's really thought about that for a long time.
Any questions for Caspian?
Is there any other, particular projects that you folks have worked on in the last year or so in which you kind of managed to combine your background in psychology? Or is it kind of like everything? But is there any particular ones that stood out?
I don't know. Well, because of all my experiences, I tend not to think about, let's try and solve this from that's psychological, or let's try and hack this. There are a lot of other reasons why Toast Electric looks like that. But when I was coming up with ideas, maybe it's the ideas that felt like they were the strongest and I couldn't work out why that felt like a really good idea. One of the original ideas behind that color palette was about thermal imagery. Obviously, thermal cameras produce representations of colors, but we have decided what those colors are. And those are very similar. The warp colors, but they're not actually producing warp colors. But when I was looking at that color palette, it made sense to me. It may have triggered memories about that sort of research. I don't know, but almost all everything I work on has to have a reason. It can't just be this looks good. And for me, a lot of the reasoning is based on academic research and things that I just find just ridiculously clever. Do we actually identify them? I don't know, but I like to think that something that feels interesting to look at, there has to be a reason for it. Like, we look at those, you take away animals. There was a reaction in the room. It's not pretty. Something happens when you saw them. Understanding why that happens is important, but also for the clients, they had the same reaction. They could imagine other people having the same reaction, and that will turn into sales. That's great. So I think all the projects I work on have some influence of the background of I work on, not just, hey, this is pretty.
You talked a little bit about, your knowledge coming from academic research, which is kind of, universal. I'm curious, like, there's often like a cultural element as well. So, like, have you discovered any differences to like how New Zealanders react to some of these things?
Not specifically New Zealanders, but one of the slides that I took out was about red. Because we all are very familiar with, hey, red is the color of passion, red is the color of aggression. And we see red, it's in our face, in our language. In 2004, the Olympics, the Athens Olympics, it was one of the Olympics where so much data got gathered, and all that information went into a pot, and scientists analyzed it and discovered that athletes wearing red, the boxing, the taekwondo, and another group, I can't remember what they were, the athletes wearing red were more likely to win. And they proved that red increases heart rate, strength. Teams wearing red in the competitive sports were more likely to red. And these colors are allocated randomly to the thing. And people bid more aggressively on eBay when objects are wearing red versus wearing red, when objects are on red backgrounds. And again, you might think, but maybe this is all to do with sort of cultural bias. But actually, the effect is exactly the same with Chinese audiences where red isn't the color of progression, it's a color of loyalty and money. So you think that there might be a couple of bias with the language, but it seems that in that instance, it's universal. Like those basic things, like how our eyes and brain interact with one another, goes beyond language. But yeah, there must be some cultural. Like I think the Japanese didn't have a word for green that didn't distinguish green and blue until much more recently than other languages. We didn't see a reason for it, which may influence maybe greenwashing and other things. I don't know. There might be a few things, but I don't know that New Zealand as a country, has been studied in any depth on that. Like I said, there are so few articles on colour theory. Maybe there should be more. But
You mentioned about like the evolution of language around with colour,
yes.
and that the root orange wasn't established
Until we got oranges.
hey?
Until we got oranges. Yeah.
Yeah. However, in the country that they were reported from, was there a word, a word used to describe the colour of that wasn't adopted?
Where did the Sanskrit word naranja come from? I have no idea. But again, every words don't interfere and nothing. They're all derived from something else. But I would imagine that there was a time when language evolves. That word itself must have evolved from something. And I don't see why it wouldn't have been a similar evolution to the English word orange. Like we had a perfectly good yellow-red that described what it is. Like we needed to describe it, yellow-red. And it's just more convenient. What around us is yellow-red, this naranja, right? And then that just got orange.
You mentioned lots of research and articles. I just wondered if there's any websites or journals you perhaps interact with on a daily or weekly basis that you could recommend?
Yes, Google Nick Calendar with a K and sign up to his mailing list. He's an extremely easy read, but his books on he's written a book on the Tangled By, which is his book on century foundations, which talks about this in so much more detail about how words like some words have an upward. I read a book about why authority and height are linked. He's putting it down to, as we grow, it's the things that have power are bigger than us, like our parents, and how that may continue He's written a very controversial statement about how different types of buttons on websites have different things, and actually what we call secondary buttons, or buttons with outlines and not fills, are actually more effective because they have less weight to them. And if we're going to make purchases, we don't want to feel like we're spending a lot of money. So by changing the apparent weight of the objects that we have to click, it can make the purchase feel lighter. And it's like these things these experiments that people have done in the past, he unpacks them to make them more relevant for the world that we live in today. And he's a really good reader. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any final questions?
What's your favourite colour?
My wife is called Ronya, and so I quite like orange right now. Very close.
Yeah, so we do with a lot of companies I work with, we do WGS trends and together quite a lot that covers psychological impacts on sort of society, impact from colour and production, sort of where we go from that. And so I'm wondering if that sort of following that, like I'm looking at a children's range at the moment and looking at colours, and they're very automatically we're looking at kind of trying to help children, especially post-COVID, with their communication skills, and which have dropped slightly, and looking at colours and things like that. And I've automatically, you say to use red as like, oh, this is so expressive, but I'm real cross. And now I'm really questioning that. Like, do you use the WGSF trend research when you're looking to colour theory?
It's don't. I don't. Let's say my job as a creative is to do many things at once. And I would love for all our projects to have way more time to do research. But that isn't always the case. And often we rely on established design patterns to move a project along quickly. And we're familiar with red as a color for alert. That is how it is. That is a design pattern. It is also based on, red as a color of a lot of poisonous things. Like, so these things must have roots in something. But yeah, I'd love to spend more time doing research. I'd love to spend half a project just being confident, knowing that the reasons for these decisions are based on science, and that doesn't have to be really dry. Some of these facts are amazing and empowering. Not just, hey, red is a color of danger, we have to use red. What else does it mean? Yes, it makes you stronger. Like, that could be a real thing. It would help teams choose what they should be wearing against another team. And knowing about the advantage of wearing it, your away kit. Maybe your away kit should be red because you have a disadvantage when you play away. Everyone else around at the home team. Those are things that you could use to your advantage. But yeah, I'd like to spend more time with this. But I also get another buzz and actually making creative things. You don't want to make the completely wrong decision of why suddenly everyone's, why is everyone really calm in this room that's supposed to be inspiring? It's that big colour again. Little knowledge goes a long way, but yeah, I just find it fascinating. There's no limit to what we learn. We just spend more time even looking at the things that we thought we knew, and just, oh my god, there's another way of looking at this. This is amazing. Just love this idea of sensory foundations, these building blocks. What actually mean? How could we actually use that information to just change one little thing, and that might have a ripple effect.
Well, big round of applause for Caspian.